The term Dark Ages conjures images of chaos and decline, 1,000 years lost between Rome and the Renaissance. But this myth was invented by later thinkers. The so-called Dark Ages were not a pause button on history. People of the early Middle Ages weren't waiting for the Renaissance. They were building their own world. The real story is far more complex and far more interesting than the myth. The early Middle Ages began with the slow collapse of the Western Roman Empire. By the 5th century, Rome was weakened by overextension, economic crisis, and relentless invasions. The Visigoths sacked Rome in 410, shocking the world. In 476, the last Western emperor was deposed, but the empire didn't fall overnight. It crumbled. Central authority vanished, replaced by local warlords and bishops. Roman infrastructure decayed, and the unifying force of Roman law dissolved. The Western Empire splintered into competing kingdoms: Franks in Gaul, Visigoths in Iberia, Ostrogoths in Italy, and others. Britain, abandoned by Rome, fractured into small kingdoms vulnerable to new invaders. Climate change and the Justinianic plague compounded the chaos, shrinking cities and isolating communities. Literacy faded, and life became more local and dangerous. The dream of a unified empire was gone, replaced by a patchwork of shifting alliances. Yet, out of this chaos, new societies began to form. After Rome, cities emptied and life became rural. Power shifted to local lords and warrior chieftains, laying the groundwork for feudalism. The church filled the void, with bishops and the Pope taking on new roles. Christianity united people, blending Roman, Germanic, and Christian traditions. Out of fragmentation, a new medieval order slowly emerged. As Roman authority faded, new kingdoms rose across Europe, each adapting to local realities. The Franks united Gaul, while Anglo-Saxon and Brittonic realms shaped Britain. In Iberia, the Visigoths fell to Arab and Berber invaders, creating Al-Andalus, a centre of learning and culture. Across Europe, conflict, migration, and innovation forged a new world from the ruins of the old. As cities shrank, monasteries became the guardians of knowledge. Monks across Europe preserved ancient texts, copying not just religious works, but also classical literature. Without their efforts, much of the ancient world's wisdom would have vanished. Monasteries were also centres of creativity. Irish monks produced illuminated manuscripts like the Book of Kells, blending Christian and Celtic art. This was not passive preservation, but active cultural creation. Technological innovation flourished too. The heavy plough, horse collar, and three-field system revolutionized agriculture, boosting food production. These advances supported population growth and recovery. Warfare evolved with the rise of the mounted knight, enabled by the stirrup and new equipment. Knights became the military elite, reinforcing the power of landholding aristocrats. The groundwork for Europe's future prosperity was being laid in these quiet, often overlooked places. Monasteries kept the flame of learning alive. Innovation, not ignorance, defined the age. By the 8th century, real power in Francia shifted to the Carolingians. Charles Martel's victory at Tours secured the kingdom, and his son Pepin became king with papal blessing. Charlemagne expanded the empire, uniting much of Western Europe, and was crowned emperor in Rome, reviving the Western Roman Empire. He launched the Carolingian Renaissance, gathering scholars and establishing schools, laying the foundation for Europe's revival. While Western Europe rebuilt, the Byzantine Empire thrived in the East, preserving Roman law and tradition. Its capital, Constantinople, was a center of wealth, diplomacy, and culture. The Byzantines shielded Europe from Eastern invasions and spread Orthodox Christianity to the Slavs. Their art and learning influenced the West, especially in Italy. Meanwhile, the Islamic world rose rapidly, conquering vast territories and becoming a hub of science and scholarship. Cities like Baghdad and Cordoba preserved and expanded on Greek, Persian, and Indian knowledge. Islamic Spain, Al-Andalus, became a beacon of learning and tolerance, where scholars of all faiths collaborated. Through translations, lost works of Aristotle and others returned to Europe, fueling its intellectual revival. The Islamic world also introduced innovations in mathematics, medicine, and technology. These exchanges were vital catalysts for Europe's own awakening. The so-called Dark Ages were deeply connected to global currents of knowledge. Europe's transformation was part of a wider world. The early Middle Ages were not a single story, but a mosaic of regional experiences. The Dark Ages label hides the diversity and dynamism of the era. In Britain, migration and conflict led to new kingdoms and the birth of Old English. Christianization reconnected England to Europe and sparked cultural flowering in monasteries like Northumbria. In Francia, the Franks built the largest Western state, blending military power with church alliance. Charlemagne's empire set the model for medieval kingship, even as it fragmented after his death. Italy remained divided, fostering independent city-states that would later drive the Renaissance. Iberia became Al-Andalus, a multicultural society and intellectual powerhouse. These regional paths shaped the future of Europe. Local adaptation, not uniform decline, defined the age. The roots of modern Europe lie in these varied experiences. The so-called Dark Ages were anything but monolithic. Shedding the myth of the Dark Ages reveals a period of transformation, not stagnation. The early Middle Ages dismantled the classical world and reassembled it into something new. Roman heritage, Christian faith, and diverse cultures fused to create medieval Europe. Political fragmentation and economic hardship spurred innovation and adaptation. New agricultural techniques and political structures emerged, laying the groundwork for future growth. The Church preserved learning and provided a unifying cultural framework. By the year 1000, Europe was growing, towns revived, trade increased, and kingdoms stabilized. The seeds of the High Middle Ages were planted in this era. The political map, languages, and traditions of modern Europe all trace back to these centuries. Understanding this period is key to understanding our world. The struggles and achievements of its people forged the Europe we know today. The so-called Dark Ages were, in truth, a time of creative beginnings.